She had my colt between her knees and my whole future in her hands, and the first words she ever spoke to me were, "Stand still, you great fool, before you frighten him worse than the thunder did." She was not speaking to the horse. I had been the Duke of Blackmore for 11 years, and no one in 3 counties had called me a fool to my face in all that time, because I was feared, and a feared man is spoken to carefully or not at all. And there she was on the crown of the down in the gray light after a storm, a girl in a man's oilskin with her hair torn loose and salt on her boots, sitting bareback on the one animal in England I had forbidden any living soul to touch, Corvus, the last colt of my brother's line, 3 years unbroken because I would not let him be broken, bolted from a splintered stall in the night and gone onto the open down where 6 of my grooms had spent the dawn failing to lay a hand on him. She had a hand on him. She had both knees on him. She had, God help me, gentled him. The colt stood under her blowing and trembling and still, his ears turned back to listen to her the way a frightened child turns to the one calm voice in a room. "Get down from that horse," I said. "When he's ready," she said, not looking at me, her palm moving slow along his crest. "Not before. You don't get off a scared thing in a hurry. You'd know that, I'd have thought, if the talk about you were true." "And what does the talk say?" "That you were the finest rider in England." She looked at me then, and her eyes went over me once, boots to hat, the way a coper looks over a horse at a fair, pricing it, finding the flaws. "The talk," she said, "must be old." I want you to understand what I was before her, so that you understand what she did. I was a man who had made himself into stone on purpose, the way you'd pour a wall across a doorway you never meant to open again. 11 years before, in the autumn, I had ridden in the Whitmore Cup, the great steeplechase run every October across the open downs of this county, 4 miles of turf and thorn and water, the race the whole aristocracy of England came to ride and to watch, the oldest and the cruellest in the country. And I had ridden to win it, as I always won, and my younger brother Edmund had ridden beside me on a horse I had trained, a horse I had told him was safe. And at the Whitmore Brook the horse had refused and gone over wrong, and Edmund had not got up again. I did not ride to win after that. I did not ride at all to speak of. I kept my brother's bloodline of horses, and I let no man race them, and I let no man near them. And I ran Blackmore like a garrison and gave the county its cold duke, the disgraced one, the ruined one, the one who had killed his own brother with his own certainty and had the manners thereafter of a locked gate. The cup ran every October without me. The lords rode it and toasted it and did not, in my hearing, mention my brother's name, and I sat in my great cold house above the downs and let the whole warm world go past the windows. And then a horse coper's daughter caught my brother's last colt on the open down and told me the talk about me must be old, and I discovered, with something like fury and something like the first breath after a long time underwater, that I minded. That I minded very much. "His name is Corvus," I said. "He has never been ridden. He cannot be ridden. 3 men have tried and he put them in the thorn. Get down before he kills you." "He's not going to kill me." She swung her leg over and slid down him, keeping one hand on his neck the whole while, and the colt who had put a grown groom into the whitethorn a fortnight past, dropped his head and lipped at her sleeve. He was only frightened and lonely, and no one had bothered to speak to him like he mattered. I know the feeling. She handed me the halter rope as though I were the groom and she the master. "You've been keeping him like a monument, haven't you? Not a horse. A grave with legs. No wonder he bolted. There's only so long a living thing'll stand being a shrine to a dead one." No one had said Edmund's death to me in 11 years. She had not even known she'd said it. She had simply looked at a lonely horse and told the truth about it, and the truth had gone through me like a blade through paper. "You are trespassing," I said, because it was the only wall I had left standing, on Blackmore land, on Blackmore property, and you will tell me your name so that I may know whom to have removed." "Bryony Sark," she said. "Bree. My father copes horses out of Coldhaven down the coast, buys them rough and sells them gentled, or he did till his hands went. I gentle them now." She looked at Corvus, and something moved in her hard young face, something hungry and honest. "I've gentled donkeys and cobs and a mule that bit through a door. I've never in my life had my knees on anything that moved like this one does." She turned that hungry look on me. "What'll you take for him?" I laughed. It came out of me rusty and strange. I had not used it in some time. "He is not for sale. He is worth more than your village." "Everything's for sale," said Sark, "if you've stopped loving it and started only guarding it. And you have. I can see it on you." She wiped her hands on the oilskin. "Keep your colt, then, your grace. Keep your grave with legs and your old talk and your locked-up face. But you asked my name, so I'll have yours settled too. I'm the best hand with a frightened horse from here to the far headland, and one day I'm going to ride a race that'll make the whole of this county choke on its own laughing, and you're going to wish you'd sold me that colt." And she walked off down the down toward the sea with the salt on her boots, and I stood there holding my brother's horse, feeling as though a storm had come and gone through the middle of me and left everything rearranged. I told myself I would never see her again. I have never in my life been so wrong about anything. I saw her 3 weeks later, at the Michaelmas horse fair at Whitmore, in the worst possible circumstances, which is to say I saw the whole county see her. The fair was the county's great gathering before the cup, every lord and lady of the district, the stalls and the sail ring and the parade of hunters, and at the center of it, holding court, Sir Hugo Danecourt, who was everything I was supposed to be and was not. Rich, smooth, admired, the finest gentleman rider now that I no longer rode, the man the whole county expected to take the Whitmore Cup that October as he had taken it the last 3 years. Danecourt had a laugh like poured cream, and a way of making cruelty sound like wit, so that people laughed with him and only remembered afterward what they had laughed at. They were laughing when I came into the ring at Sark. She had brought a horse to sell, a rough coast-bred gray she had gentled herself, and it was, I saw at once, a very good horse, better than anything Danecourt had under him, and she had made the unforgivable error of showing it off. She had put it over the practice fences at the ring's edge, and she had ridden astride in her father's cut-down coat, a coper's girl in salt-stained boots riding better than any gentleman there, and the county could forgive a great many things, but it could not forgive that. "Extraordinary," Danecourt was saying, loud and warm to the ring of laughing faces. "Do you know, I believe the creature thinks she's people. Somebody ought to tell her the cup is a gentleman's race. It would be a kindness. Before she gets ideas." He smiled at her across the ring, the cream-smooth smile. "You've a nice little horse, girl. Sell it to a man who can do it justice and go home. This isn't your world and it never will be. You'd only be hurt." And I watched Sark's chin come up, and I knew, with a strange lurch, half dread and half delight, exactly what she was going to do, because I had seen that same chin come up on the down over my brother's horse. "I'll wager you my horse," she said, clear across the whole ring, so every soul heard it, "against a year of your income, Sir Hugo, that I ride in the Whitmore Cup this October. And I'll wager the horse again on top that I finish ahead of you." The ring went from laughing to silence so fast, I heard the wind in the fair flags. It was madness. It was ruin. No woman had ridden the Whitmore Cup in its 200 years, no commoner ever. There were not even words in the rules to forbid it because no one had ever dreamed it needed forbidding. She had wagered the one good thing she owned, and a year's fortune she could never in her life pay, against a man who would take both and enjoy it. Danecourt's smile widened like a crack in ice. "Done," he said. "Oh, done and gladly, you delightful little fool. And when you cannot even find a horse fit to enter, nor a soul in this county to sponsor a coper's brat into a gentleman's race. For you know it wants a sponsor of rank, you cannot have known that, poor thing. When you stand at the start with nothing, the wager stands too. Your horse is mine at first light on race day if you're not at the line. I do hope you'll cry. It so improves the morning. She had not known about the sponsor. I saw it hit her, the rule that a rider not of the racing families must be entered under the name and the honor of a lord of the county, a rule made a century ago to keep exactly her kind of person out. I saw her realize she had wagered everything on a race she could not legally enter, and I saw her refuse, by main force of that terrible chin, to let one flicker of it show on her face. "I'll find a sponsor," she said. "You will not," said Danecourt, delighted, "find one lord in this county with so little regard for his own name." And I heard my own voice come out of me, from the edge of the ring, in the cold, flat tone the county had learned to fear, and it said, "She has won." Every head turned. Danecourt's cream smile curdled. Brie-Sark went very still. "I am the Duke of Blackmore," I said, walking into the ring, "and I hold rank enough in this county, I believe, to sponsor whom I please into whatever race I please, and answer to no one for it, least of all to you, Danecourt." I looked at the smooth, ruined man who had taken my brother's death for granted along with everyone else, and I felt 11 years of stone crack somewhere down its length. "Miss Sark rides the Whitmore Cup under the honor of Blackmore, on a Blackmore horse, trained by me. I do not know to this day entirely why I did it. I have told myself it was spite, that I wanted to see Danecourt's face, that I wanted the county that had buried my brother with its careless smiles to choke on something. That was part of it, but it was not the whole. The whole of it was a horse-scoper's daughter on the crown of a down telling me I had turned a living thing into a grave, and being right, and the sudden intolerable thought of watching one more brave creature be broken on the thorn of this county's contempt while I stood by, as I had stood by once before, and did nothing. Brie found me at the edge of the ring as the crowd broke up buzzing. She did not thank me. I had not expected her to. I would have thought less of her if she had. "I don't want your charity," she said, low and fierce. "I meant what I said on the down. I'll not be some duke's pet project, some cause to spite your enemies with. I've been the joke of a fair once today. I'll not be a rich man's toy on top of it." "Then we understand each other," I said, "because I have no charity to give, Miss Sark, and no interest in toys. I have a horse who let no one ride him but you, and a race my family has not entered in 11 years, and a county I should like very much to see silenced." I looked at her. "You said you'd make them choke on their laughing. I find I want to watch you do it. That is not charity. That is the first thing I have wanted in a long time. Ride my brother's colt, ride Corvus, win the cup, and we shall both of us have exactly what we want and owe each other nothing but the work." She studied me the long, level way she had, pricing me, looking for the flaw. "The work'll be hard," she said. "I'll not be coddled and I'll not be spared. If I ride that colt in that race I mean to win it, not to be gentled through it like an invalid." "Miss Sark," I said, "I have never coddled or spared a living soul in my life. Ask anyone in this county. It is the one thing they will tell you truthfully about me." The first true thing I ever saw her do, that was almost a smile. "Right then," said Brie-Sark, "first light you're down. And your grace," she was already walking away, salt on her boots, toward the coast road, "wear something you don't mind ruining. I ruin everyone I train with. It's the only way it works." She was not wrong about that either. We trained through the back end of that autumn on the high open down above Blackmore, in the cold, clean light off the sea. And I will tell you plainly that they were the best mornings of my life, and I did not know it until they were nearly gone. We fought. God, how we fought! She rode like a force of nature and with the manners of one, all instinct and no schooling, and I had a lifetime of schooling and had forgotten, until she made me remember, the instinct underneath it. She would take a line at the practice fences that no trained rider would dream of, a mad, slanting, reckless line, and it would work, and I would ride up shouting that it was luck and folly, and would kill her at the Whitmore Brook where the ground fell away, and she would ride up shouting back that a fence was a conversation and not an arithmetic, that I rode like a man reading a ledger, that I'd forgotten horses were alive because I was so busy being afraid of them. "I'm not afraid of horses," I said. "You're terrified of that one," she said, nodding at Corvus, blowing and happy under her. "You've never once got up on him. 3 months I've ridden him and you've never once. You train me from the ground like a general who won't go to the front." "Why is that, do you think, Your Grace?" I did not answer her. I could not. Because the truth was that I had not been on a racing horse since the morning my brother died, and she had seen it, the way she saw everything, straight through the wall to the frightened thing behind it. She did not press me. That was the astonishing thing about her. Under all the noise and the salt and the terrible chin, she knew, by some instinct she'd never have called kindness, exactly when to stop. She let it lie. And the next morning she took Corvus over the whole line of downland fences clean and fast and laughing, and rode back to where I stood and said only, "He's ready when you are. Both of you. No hurry," and left it there. And something in me that had been clenched for 11 years loosened one finger of its grip. I taught her what I knew. She was the finest natural rider I had ever seen, and she had everything to learn. And she learned it the way a fire takes dry wood, the reading of the ground, the saving of a horse's strength across 4 hard miles, the 100 small cruelties of a great steeplechase that instinct alone would never teach her. And she taught me, without either of us ever calling it teaching, how to stand at the edge of the very ground where my brother had died and not be turned to stone by it. She made me walk the Whitmore course with her, fence by fence, and when we came to the brook, the wide dark water where Edmund's horse had refused, where I had not stood in 11 years, I stopped and could not go on, and she did not say anything soft. She said, "Tell me what happened here, not the county's version, yours." And I stood at the Whitmore brook in the cold and told a horse scoper's daughter the thing I had never told a living soul. That I had known the horse was green, that I had let Edmund ride him anyway because I was so certain, because I was always so certain, and that my certainty had killed the only person who had ever loved me without fear. She listened to all of it. And when I was done, she did not tell me it wasn't my fault, which would have been a lie and I'd have hated her for it. She said, "That's a heavy thing to carry 11 years. You've been carrying it like Corvus carried being a grave, standing still under it so long you've forgotten you could put it down and still be a horse." She looked at the dark water. "You didn't kill your brother, Your Grace. You loved him, and you were wrong about a horse, which is a thing that happens to every soul who ever loved a horse, and it cost more than most. That's grief. It isn't murder. There's a difference, and you've spent 11 years refusing to feel it because feeling it means the grief comes in, and you'd rather have the guilt, because guilt you can lock the gate on and grief you can't." She swung up onto Corvus. "Come and ride the brook with me. Not to win anything, just so it stops being the place where the worst thing happened and starts being a place you've been with me on a good morning. That's how you unmake a haunted place. You put a better day on top of it." And I got up at last on my brother's last colt at the Whitmore brook, 11 years late, and Corvus stood for me the way he stood for her, because she had taught him I was safe, the way she taught every frightened thing that it was safe. And we rode the brook together in the cold, clean light, and I did not turn to stone, and something that had been dead in me a long time put out one green leaf. I did not tell her that I loved her. I am not sure I knew it yet in words. But I rode home off the down that morning behind a girl in a salt-stained coat, watching the way she sat a horse against the gray sea, and I thought, with the closest thing to peace I had felt in 11 years, there she is. There is the thing I had stopped believing was still in the world. The county, of course, could not allow it. Danecourt had not spent 3 weeks laughing to spend race week doing the same. As October closed in and it became clear to the grooms, to the fair gossip, to the whole buzzing district, that the coper's girl on the Blackmore colt was not a joke, that she was, in cold and terrible fact, fast, the county's amusement curdled into something uglier. There were letters to the stewards questioning whether a woman could be permitted. There were sudden discoveries of ancient rules. There was a night, I will not dwell on it, when the Blackmore stables were found unbarred and Corvus loose again on the down, and it was only that Bree had taken to sleeping in the tack room, unasked, unpaid, because she did not trust the county an inch, that the colt was found safe by dawn. She never told me she'd slept in the straw of my stables all that week to guard my brother's horse. I learned it from a groom. When I asked her, she shrugged and said a good horse was worth a cold night, and would not meet my eye, and I understood that she had done it not only for the horse. And Danecourt, smooth to the last, came to me himself, 3 days before the race, in my own cold hall, and offered me a way out that was really a way to hurt her. "Withdraw her, Blackmore," he said, warm and reasonable, cream over ice. "For her own sake. You know what the Whitmore Brook does to a green rider on a green horse. You of all men know it." He let that sit. He knew exactly where to put the knife. "You've made your point. The county's noticed. But if that girl goes over the brook and it goes wrong, that's a second vain horse and a second broken rider on your conscience, and this one a slip of a thing who trusted you. Can you carry that, truly, again?" He smiled. "Save her. Withdraw her. I'll even let the wager go, call it a gentleman's mercy. No one need ever say the Duke of Blackmore got another rider killed being certain." He wanted me to break. He had found the one fault line left in me, and he leaned on it with all his cream-smooth weight, and for one black hour that night I nearly did break. I stood at my window over the dark down and thought, he is right, I am certain again. I have talked a brave girl onto a killing horse over a killing brook because I wanted to feel alive again, and if she dies I will have done it twice. And then Bree Sark, who had heard the whole of it. She was in my stables as she was every night, and my hall carries walked into the room without knocking, in her father's coat, with straw in her hair, furious in a way I had never seen her. "Don't you dare," she said. "Don't you dare take his fear and make it yours and call it protecting me. I'm not your brother, your grace, and I'm not a horse you were wrong about. I'm a grown woman who priced this race with her eyes open and chose it. Danecourt wants me out because I'm going to beat him, and he knows it, and he's found the one lie you'll believe about yourself, and you're standing here believing it." She crossed the room, and she had never once touched me in 3 months. We were two people who did not touch. She took my face in her two cold hands, hard, and made me look at her. "You didn't kill Edmund, and you won't kill me, because I'm not going over that brook on your certainty. I'm going over it on mine. This is my line, my choice, my neck. All you did was believe I could when no one else in the whole county would. Don't you take that back now. Don't you dare turn back into stone 3 days, before the only thing I've ever wanted." Her hands were cold on my face, and her eyes were fierce and wet, and she was, I understood, with the force of the tide coming in, the bravest and the truest and the most alive thing I had ever stood next to. And I was not going to be able to keep the gate locked much longer, and I no longer wished to. "I'm not going to withdraw you," I said. "I only Bree," her name, I had never used it. "I have watched one person I could not bear to lose go over that brook. I find I cannot easily do it twice. That is not certainty. That is the opposite of it. That is the most frightened I have been in 11 years, and it is because I stopped. Even then, even there, the stone had one hand left on my throat. It is because I have come to." "I know," said Bree Sark softly, for once in her life not shouting. "I know, me too. You great locked-up fool, me too." And she let go of my face and stepped back and wiped her eyes with the back of a stable-dirty hand and said, in something nearer her ordinary voice, "So don't say it now before the race, or I'll go soft, and I can't ride soft. Say it after. Say it when I've won. Then you can say the whole of it, and I'll say the whole of it back, and we'll neither of us be able to pretend it's only about a horse." She went to the door. 3 days. Get some sleep, your grace. Your rider needs you sharp." And she went out into the dark toward the stables and the straw and the colt she was guarding with her own cold nights, and I stood in my hall with the fire going down, and the whole locked house around me. And for the first time in 11 years, I was afraid not of the past, but of the future, afraid of losing something not behind me but ahead of me, which is, I have since learned, the only fear that means you have come back to life. The morning of the Whitmore Cup came in cold and clear and pitiless, a hard blue autumn sky and a wind off the sea, and the whole county turned out along 4 miles of open down to watch a horse-coper's daughter make good on her wager or die trying. They came to see her fail. I will not pretend otherwise. I stood at the start and read it on every well-bred face. The pleasant anticipation of a coarse girl's comeuppance, the story they would tell at dinner for years, the year the Blackmore madman put a fishwife on his dead brother's horse and she came off at the brook. Do you remember? Danecourt sat his big blood bay at the line, immaculate, cream-smooth, certain, and he looked at Brie on Corvus and touched his cap to her with exquisite mockery, and she looked back at him with the terrible chin and did not touch hers. She was the only woman at the line, the only coper's child in 200 years. She wore my brother's racing colors. I had given them to her the night before, the blue and the silver, folded away 11 years, and when I put them in her hands neither of us had been able to speak. And she sat my brother's last colt with the salt still, I swear, on her boots. And she looked, in that field of the finest gentleman riders in England, more right than any of them, more made for it, as though the whole of the down had only been waiting for someone to ride it who was not afraid. I got her up. My hands were not steady and hers were. Read the ground, I said, not them. Save him for the second circuit. He's got more than you think in the last mile. He's his father's son. And Brie, I looked up at her against the hard blue sky. The brook. Take it on your own line, the mad slanting one, the one I said would kill you. I was wrong. It's the right line. It was always the right line. Take the brook the way only you would dare. She looked down at me and her fierce face went, for one moment, unguarded and young. Watch me choke them, your grace, said Brie Sark. And the flag dropped and they went. I cannot give you every fence of 4 miles. I lived it one heartbeat at a time, and it has stayed in me whole, the way the worst and best mornings do. I can tell you she was last at the first fence, and I nearly stopped my own heart. Last, boxed in. The gentlemen closing round her on purpose, Danecourt's people riding her wide, the old cruelties of the great races that instinct alone would never have taught her and that I had, thank God, spent 3 months teaching. And I can tell you she did not panic. She sat still and patient in the dirty, crowded heart of it and let them spend themselves being cruel, saving the colt, reading the ground, the way I'd taught her, and the way she'd taught me, that a race, like a fence, is a conversation and not an arithmetic. And one by one across the first long circuit the gentlemen who had ridden hard to shut her out began to come back to her, blown, and one by one she came through them, not with fury but with patience. A coper's daughter who had all the time in the world, because she had never once in her life been given anything, and had learned to wait for what she wanted. At the start of the second circuit she was fourth, at the far turn she was second. And ahead of her, alone, going for home, immaculate and certain, was Sir Hugo Danecourt on his big blood bay, and between him and the winning post was the Whitmore brook. He knew she was coming. I saw him look back once, and I saw the cream smile gone, and I saw him do the thing that told the whole county, at last and forever, exactly what he was. He took his horse across her line at the brook, deliberately, on purpose. The oldest and dirtiest trick in the great races, to cross a closing rider at the water, to break their line and their rhythm at the one fence where a broken line means a fall, and a fall at the Whitmore brook means what it had meant for my brother. He crossed her at the brook to put her in the water, to win, and to make it look like the accident everyone had come to see. And Brie Sark, my brave, my brilliant, my salt-booted love, did the thing that no trained rider would have done, the mad, slanting, reckless thing, the thing I had once ridden up shouting would kill her and had learned at the last to trust. She did not fight for the broken line. She threw it away. She sat down and asked the colt, my brother's colt, who loved her, who would have done anything she asked, for the impossible slanting stride, the line off the very edge of the brook where the bank was highest and the water widest and no sane rider would ever go. And Corvus rose to it out of nothing, out of trust, out of 3 months of a girl telling him he was safe, and they cleared the Whitmore Brook at its worst and widest, clean and huge and beautiful. While Danecourt's dirty crossing left his own horse wrong at the water, and the big Bloodbay refused and put Sir Hugo Danecourt, immaculate and certain, straight into the brook he had meant for her. He was not hurt, I am almost sorry to report it. He came out of the water soaked and screaming, and the county, which had come to laugh at a coper's girl, watched its champion sit dripping and beaten in the brook where he had tried to drown her, and the county, at last, chose the right thing to laugh at. And Bree Sark rode the last mile of the Whitmore Cup alone, up the long green rise to the post in my dead brother's blue and silver on my dead brother's last colt, 4 miles and 200 years and one whole cruel county behind her, and she crossed the line first, the first woman, the first commoner, the first of her kind ever to take the oldest race in England, and the sound that went up off those downs is in my ears still, because they could not help it. Even the ones who had come to see her fall. She had ridden the thing they all worshipped better than any of them had ever ridden it, and there is a kind of courage so complete that even the people who hate you cannot keep from cheering it, and she had it, and they cheered, choking on their own laughing exactly as she had promised at the fair. I reached her before anyone. I do not remember crossing the ground. I remember she came off the colt into my arms, not fainting, never fainting, she'd have scorned to faint, but breathless and shaking and alight. And I remember I held her, in front of the whole staring, choking county, held her hard against the blue and silver, and I did not care who saw, I who had cared about nothing but not being seen for 11 years. I told you, she said into my coat, laughing and crying at once. I told you I'd make them choke. You did, I said, Bree, you did. And then, because she had told me to say it after when she'd won, so that neither of us could pretend it was only about a horse, I said the whole of it. I love you. I have loved you since the crown of the down when you called me a fool over my brother's horse and told me the truth about myself that no one had dared tell me in 11 years. I did not think I would ever want anything again, and I want you entirely for the rest of my life, and I do not care that you're a coper's daughter and I'm a duke, and the whole of this county is standing here with its mouth open. Let them stand. Marry me. Not as my project, not as my cause, not as anything but what you are, which is the best rider on these downs and the bravest soul I have ever stood beside and the only person alive who ever unlocked the gate. Marry me, Bree Sark. Choke them one more time. She pulled back and looked up at me with her fierce, wet, salt-streaked face, and the terrible chin came up one last time, and she said, because she was Bree Sark and would be Bree Sark to the end of her days, on one condition, your grace. Anything. You ride the next one. She grinned, reckless and radiant, my whole future in her hands as it had been from the first gray morning. You and me, both of us, in the cup. I'll not marry a man who trains from the ground like a general who won't go to the front. She put her cold hand against my face in front of them all. Come back to life properly, Rafe Vane. Ride with me. That's my condition. Say yes. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I had been saying yes to her in the part of me that was still alive since the crown of the down. We were married that winter in the little church at Coldhaven that smelled of salt and tar. Not the great cold cathedral of the county, her choice, and my gladness at her choice, with her father in the front pew, his ruined hands folded, weeping without shame at the sight of his wild girl in blue and silver becoming a duchess, and half the coast there in their Sunday best. And at the back, more of the county than I would ever have expected, come round at last, as people do. To the side of the thing they cannot help admiring. She never stopped riding. She rode the Whitmore Cup 9 more times and won it 4. And the year our eldest was old enough to be lifted onto a quiet cob and led round the paddock, it was Bree who led and I who watched from the rail, the two of us who had each spent so long alone, now never alone, and the great house that had been a garrison and a shrine filled up, over the years, with mud and dogs and the smell of the sea and a great deal of shouting, most of it fond. And every October, on the morning of the cup, before the crowds came, The two of us rode the Whitmore Brook together in the cold, clean light. Not to win anything, just to put another good day on top of the worst one, the way she had taught me the very first autumn. And my brother's name was spoken between us easily now, and often with love and not with guilt, the way you speak the name of someone you have finally, properly grieved. I had been the cold Duke of Blackmore, feared and locked and turned to stone, a man who had made himself a grave with a title and stood still under it for 11 years. And a horse-coper's daughter with salt on her boots caught my brother's last colt on the crown of a down, and looked me over once the way she'd look over a horse at a fair, and found, under all the guarding and the fear and the ruin, the one thing left in me worth gentling, and she gentled it, the way she gentled every frightened thing, by refusing absolutely to pity it, and by believing absolutely that it could still run. She swore at the fair she would make the whole county choke on its laughing. She did, but the one she truly beat, at the only two things I had left the race and myself, was me. She rode into a locked man and outrode every wall he had. And I have thanked God, every cold, clear autumn morning of the long, warm life she gave me, that I lost that first race on the down, that a fisher girl beat me before she ever beat anyone, and told me the talk about me was old, and turned out in the only way that ever mattered to be entirely and gloriously right.